Let's look at an example. In this case, we are going to redistribute from EIGRP into OSPF. Notice how I stated that. From EIGRP into OSPF. It's important to realize that redistribution is an import process. We are taking routes in the routing table from a particular source and importing them into the other routing protocol. So in this case, we are taking EIGRP routes and importing them into the OSPF routing process. So if I want to import routes into a routing protocol, then where am I going to perform the configuration? Well, if I'm importing them into OSPF, I want to go into OSPF configuration mode and import them. Import them. So that's where we are right now. We typed in router OSPF 1 as an example. And now we're in router OSPF configuration mode. And we are typing in redistribute. And what are we redistributing? In this case, EIGRP. And we have to specify the autonomous system number for EIGRP. And this is because if there are multiple EIGRP autonomous systems running on this exact same router, we have to identify to OSPF which ones we are going to import. So in this case, it's EIGRP autonomous system 100 routes that we are going to be importing. Look at all the different options we have. We have the ability to specify the metric right here, as I mentioned, the metric. So in this example, what is the metric? The metric is going to be cost. So what is the cost? Is there a default metric? Yes. The default metric, as we stated, was 20. We can specify a metric type, and we'll look at this in a little more detail. We have a specific discussion dedicated to the metric type, but if you recall, you can have E1 and E2 as your metric type for external routes, routes you are redistributing, routes that are being, or routes to destinations that are outside of your autonomous system. So we can define the metric type. By default, it's going to be E2. So if you don't specify a metric type, it's E2. You can attach a route map. You can attach a route map, and that route map is going to give you granular control over redistribution. Right now, if you don't specify a route map, it affects every single route that's being redistributed, your command. So in this case, redistribute EIGRP 100, that would be all routes that are going to be treated the same way. But if we have a route map now, we can granularly control what happens to different routes, and we'll see that in a future discussion. This subnets keyword is so important. So important. It says here, consider subnets for redistribution into OSPF. That doesn't really tell us what it's for. Let me explain it to you this way. There are classful and classless IPv4 networks. Classful, class A, B, C, using their default subnet masks of /8, /16, /24. That's classful. Classless is everything else. If you've done VLSM, variable length subnet masking, which more than likely you have for IPv4, you're now dealing with classless networks. If you want to redistribute networks that are not default class A, B, or C using their default masks, then you need this subnets keyword. This subnets keyword is going to be used to redistribute those networks that are not default class A, B, or C. So if for some reason redistribution is not working properly, you're not getting the routes you expect, it might be because you forgot the subnets keyword. We'll see that in our example. And lastly, you can also specify a tag. when you redistribute those routes. And we will discuss this tag option in detail later. But just so you realize, the tag option would be similar to capturing a shark during Shark Week. Analyzing the shark, weighing it, measuring it, checking it all over, and then tagging it with an identification number. And that identification number allows you to keep track of it. Because if you ever catch that same shark again, you can now look at the ID and compare it to what you collected, those statistics you collected last time. Well, this is what we're doing. We're just tagging these routes at the redistribution point. So now there's an identifier on them. So if later on we want to do something to these routes, we can just call upon them by the tag we've given them.